I've played a lot of games. A lot of games. A lot of games. I've fallen in love with countless games, both old and new. I've been completely immersed in 1,000 virtual worlds, but none of them have ever been as beautiful as Dunwall from the first Dishonored game. This isn't a matter of fidelity or cutting-edge technology. It's all about the art direction. From the brutalist architecture of the streets of Dunwall and the City Watch's invasive quarantine provisions, all designed by Victor Antonov, creator of the aesthetics of the Combine and Half-Life 2, to the disgusting alleyways of the flooded whaling district, where the mesmerizing glow of processed whale oil spills over and flows down dark alleyways, urging you to venture into the darkness like the bulb of an anglerfish. Every environment in this game is memorable, intricate, and, above all else, beautiful. That, in and of itself, isn't anything that's worthy of a whole video. However, there's a lot more to dig into with this game's aesthetics. There's a level of discussion to be had about this game's looks that I couldn't see myself reaching with any other game. See, even the most beautiful games can still lose a lot of their luster sometimes when you stand in the right place or move the camera to the right position. A lot of the time, all you need to do is simply turn the camera around and look behind you in a linear game, and it becomes clear that while nothing necessarily looks wrong, these levels obviously weren't designed to be looked at from this angle. The framing is all off. Sure, this still looks like Mirror's Edge, but it doesn't look as striking or stirring as the level does when you look at it from the angle that the developers were counting on. And why should it? Nobody's going to turn around here unless they've already completely taken themselves out of the experience. My point is, good framing in a game level isn't something that just happens. It's not something that you can suddenly create by moving a couple of lights or props around. Good framing is something that needs to be baked into the level's design from the very start. Sure, maybe the vanishing point of an environment could be more clearly demonstrated by moving this box out of the way, which would make it easier for the player to subconsciously know where they're supposed to go and make the level look a little bit prettier to boot. But that box acts as a vital piece of cover that's super important to the gameplay here, and the raw gameplay usually wins out in these arguments. Ultimately, though, in games where the player has near total control of the position and angle of the camera, framing can be very difficult. Lots of games have little tricks that they use to force good framing onto the players. The Halo series, for instance, is known for having these absolutely beautiful skyboxes with mind-blowing vistas all full of flying banshees and hornets dotting the sky. And so, from Halo 2 onwards, the crosshair was lowered from the middle of the screen down a little bit. This isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea, but look at how much more exciting the visuals are when only the lower third of our screen is covered in dirt, as opposed to a normal, centralized crosshair where about half of what we see is just the bland brown tones of the floor. If I take a screenshot of me headshotting an enemy elite with a centralized crosshair, the enemy and the blood effect are clearly the focus. But if I just lower the crosshair a little bit and take that screenshot again, suddenly the world that the two of us are in becomes the focus. Very fitting for a game that's named after its worlds. It's a really clever little trick. Other games like to use your weapon models to create a sense of flow to the visuals. In The Darkness 2, a personal favorite of mine, these two evil tendrils that are always sitting on either side of the screen are constantly guiding you with simple little visual tricks. When you pick up a car door to use it as a shield, the window of the door lowers your field of view, urging you to slow down and focus on headshotting a couple specific enemies, whereas when you pick up a skewer of some kind, the line points directly to your crosshair, urging you to treat this thing like a single-use sniper rifle. When you pick up an enemy, he blocks most of the screen, urging you to slow down and enjoy the sadistic side of becoming a monster, tormenting one enemy after the other, watching all the onlooking enemies become more and more terrified of you. In a case like this, the visuals are sort of subconsciously telling you how you should be playing the game, sure, but they also take you on a visual journey, reinforcing the campy, over-the-top tone of The Darkness 2 better than any writing or acting ever could. This screenshot is a much better example of visual storytelling than 100 rooms with skeletons and teddy bears in them, and it's because the framing is being used to convey the emotion of the story, even if that story is as simple as, this guy's about to get fucked. Thanks to the framing, you can really feel just how hard he's about to get fucked. It's these brash, over-the-top animations that make The Darkness 2 stick out so prominently in my head. Still though, as fascinating and clever and effective as all of these tricks may be, they all exist to circumvent that core level design problem that I mentioned earlier. The room just looks better without that box there. But we designed the combat around that box being there. Lowering the crosshair or designing your view models to urge you to push forward and be aggressive, those are all just visual flourishes to make up for the fact that this box is just ruining the feng shui of this room. Dishonored uses some of these tricks too. The sharp angle at which you hold your crossbow, and the way that the view model and crosshair lock onto enemies, tempting you to make the shot and really making you feel like you're holding these guards' lives in your hands. The vignette that appears around your screen when you crouch emphasizes the feeling of being an invisible, elegant ninja. The sudden, fast flick of your sword whenever you block tells you that you should try blocking right before an enemy attack hits, subconsciously teaching you to go for parries instead of just blocking. The sharp angle of the camera when you lean emphasizes the corruption of the city and your place as an interloper within that corruption. But Dishonored doesn't rely on these tricks to create its striking visuals. It doesn't need its weapons or UI to show you how to play the game, or to make beautiful, memorable images appear every second. Dishonored goes for a brute force approach. Everything in Dishonored is beautiful from every angle. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You'd have to be going out of your way to take a screenshot of Dishonored that wouldn't be an amazing wallpaper. So, before I move ahead to speculating on how they achieved this, I think we should briefly talk about what good framing is. I generally try to stay away from proven theory on this channel. I just don't really like facts. Opinions are way more interesting, and a lot of the time they teach you more, but I'll make an exception here. To start off with, let's talk about the rule of thirds. You know how just about every single camera has that grid option? That's because of this concept. Basically, split up just about any effective marketing image, famous painting or photograph, really good selfie, whatever, into a 3x3 grid, and you'll start seeing that there's a pattern between which pieces achieve their goals and which ones don't. Key focal points are usually in the top left or top right, with supplemental information going below it, generally following a diagonal line from the top of the image to the bottom, as that's the way that we naturally read things and mentally process images. Of course, we can subvert this concept to give our image a bit more subtext. The Deus Ex box art is a great example. The beam of light in the game's title form a cross, whose shape is emphasized by its placement directly in the center of the image, and our protagonist looks upward towards that cross to give off this idea that J.C. Denton is a representation of humanity's drive to replace God. This just wouldn't work as subtly as it does if we follow the conventions of effective, smooth framing. It's a little bit awkward to look at compared to a Coca-Cola ad, but it achieves things that it couldn't otherwise. Point is, these rules are loose, but a good guideline. Knowing when to break the rules is what creates a truly great artist in any medium. Back to the basics though, if we want to use framing like this for something other than selling Coca-Cola, we could have our subject appear at one of our image's focal points in the top corners of the grid, and then have everything below and surrounding that focal point tell you something about the subject. As an example, let's start with something super simple, a little visual that isn't really important to your objectives in any way, but one that sticks out in my mind every time I think about this level. It's these two dancing sex workers in the Golden Cat. The distinct shape and placement of this metal frame that we're standing on here urges us to blink over to it to get a better view of our environment, and we're greeted with these two dancing prostitutes in this big, empty room surrounded by lavish decorations. Narratively, these two would serve the exact same function in any other room in the building, but their placement here in the emptiest part of the whole room serves as one of 1,000 surprisingly potent visuals in this game. First off, we get a visual example of why these two have chosen to work here. The colorful, posh decorations serve as a sharp contrast to the cold, dead blue-gray of the streets below, emphasizing the relative safety of this life as opposed to doing the same sort of work on the streets. Then, more interestingly, you've got the emptiness of the space surrounding them. They're completely surrounded by empty chairs, giving the impression that their bosses just ordered them to continue their operations as usual, completely unobservant to the fact that Dunwall is falling apart. Where we'd expect to see a huge crowd of aristocrats sitting on their benches cheering them on and liberally tossing coins their way, we instead see emptiness, emphasizing that these little pockets of posh, aristocratic life are slowly fading away. No matter how hard the ruling class in Dunwall tries to distance themselves from the reality of their plague-ridden city, The dissociation rings more hollow every day as their peers die to the plague or seclude themselves. You can just feel that these plants aren't going to have anybody left to water them soon, and that nobody's going to be delivering these fresh fruits anymore. And soon, this place will just be another empty building full of mildew and rats. The sad body language of the dancers indicates that they're aware of this reality, but haven't got any better alternatives than just hoping to ride this thing out and praying that Dunwall survives this plague. This game is full of things like this, but if you want something a little bit more practical, more relevant to the player's experience, you've got a lot of visual guidance in Samuel's boat rides, like on the first proper mission, the High Overseer. As we approach the shore, we see this massive pipe and this bridge all heading left into the city, exactly the same direction that we're going. As it turns out, going immediately to the left at your first opportunity isn't the best idea, as the city watch is super dense on this street. But because of the strong visual indication that, like the pipes in the bridge, we too should be flowing left into the city, we go forward only until we see another opportunity to go left. Whether you've got objective markers on or not, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who starts out this mission thinking that their goal is to go straight through these buildings rather than to the left. While it's a lot easier to create visuals like this in situations where, like this one, you know that the player is going to be looking at things from a particular angle, it's super interesting to me how they've managed to fill these levels with really potent images like those two dancers, even in environments where the player's path and orientation are completely unknown variables. This game is absolutely full of things like this, too. Environments where, no matter where you are or which way you're looking, you're gonna get a potent visual of some kind, like those two dancing women. Basically, these levels were designed to look really good from every angle. The framing is always amazing, no matter where you're standing, and in a game where you can literally teleport and freely travel between rooftops, alleyways, sewers, or stairwells, that's incredibly impressive. I have an insane amount of respect for the developers of this game, and that's simply because I think I can understand how much work it must have taken to pull this off. Now, I've never heard any of the game's developers talking about this, so this is all speculation on my part. But it seems to me that every time a developer wanted to add in a piece of cover, or a platform to jump on, or a sewer to crawl through, or anything like that, every other object and building in the area probably had to be subtly moved in order to keep the framing as nice as possible, and then that causes knock-on effects to the gameplay that then need to be adjusted and readjusted until both the gameplay and the visuals were working in perfect harmony. The amount of iteration and cross-team communication it must have taken to pull this off in a game with this much freedom of movement and a fair share of non-linearity to boot is nothing short of insane. The only other games I've seen put this much consideration into the visual framing of their environments would be games with fixed camera angles, like the older Resident Evil or Metal Gear Solid games. I think I've covered the framing of these environments to a level that I can be happy with for now. So, next up, let's talk about something that's a little bit less exclusive to Dishonored, but which the game still excels at with flying colors: the visual flow to these levels. Dishonored fans might remember a pair of videos that I did on the two pieces of story DLC for this game, The Knife of Dunwall and The Brigmore Witches. They're two of my favorite videos I've ever done. In them, I went mission by mission, explaining how each mission was a different chapter in Dowd's story. Every mission has little visual or mechanical tricks that it pulls to let us peek into Dowd's head and see the world through his eyes. There are more enemies on the rooftops, meaning that spaces that would have been super safe in the base game don't feel safe anymore, emphasizing how Dowd feels like he's no longer in control of his destiny and how he can't escape from what he's done to this city. The bright, sunny exterior of the Rothwild slaughterhouse is contrasted by its dark, grimy interior as Dowd gets closer and closer to Rothwild, where he'll inevitably have to confront the selfishness of his own motivations here compared to the selfless courage of the striking dock workers. Little things like these turn these missions into visual stories about what might be going through our character's head throughout the game. The base game is full of this stuff too. Every single one of its missions is a little visual story. One of my favorite examples of this would be The Royal Physician, the mission where we have to cross Dunwall Bridge and kidnap Dr. Anton Sokolov. Right off the bat, as Samuel drives us towards the dock, we start out heading towards the sunlight and arrive in the shade. A subconscious little visual reminder that Dunwall is dealing with its own sunset, heading towards its doom. Moving ahead, though, throughout the first section of this level, we travel along rusted metal catwalks and cramped industrial interiors, with the occasional rotted-out apartment of a dead lower-classman. However, once we get past the security checkpoint, we're instantly greeted with the bright, warm glow of sunlight hitting the well-maintained bricks of the higher-income housing. Each home is totally vacated, just as the homes of the poor were, but the contrast in color and direct sunlight serves as a stark visual metaphor for the different forces vying for safety in Dunwall: the City Watch, the aristocratic class, and the poor. While this area is as open as any other, a long conversation between two witnesses blocking our direct path urges us to take this lower path, giving us a relaxing walk by the seaside as opposed to the grimy, threatening alleyway on the other side of the building. It's as if the game is trying to show us just how easy it is to ignore the horrors in the streets if you have the right scenery surrounding you, just as the rich have been doing. Really, this interplay between light and dark, cold blue versus warm orange, is kind of the basis for this entire level's visuals, and for me, it all culminates in this walk across the top of Caldwin's Bridge. We've got light on one side with darkness on the other, with Corvus sitting atop, literally walking a tightrope between right and wrong, good and bad, cruelty and justice. The game's entire premise of forcing the players to take responsibility for their actions and be careful with the powers they've been given is beautifully demonstrated here all along this level, entirely visually. It's just beautiful. That's really the only word for it. Lots of games have fantastic art direction, but all of the best paintings mean something. In Dishonored, every frame is a painting, and each one means something. I know that I'm getting wildly speculative here, and overly poetic to boot. The odds that I've hit the nail on the head with these visuals and perfectly summarized the developer's intentions are absolutely 0%. Truth be told, Victor Antonov probably just gave the level designers some god-tier style sheets and they got to work. But this game feels like a series of paintings in every way, and I'm the type of person to never accept that the curtains were just blue, to reference the classic anecdote. This game and its visuals just speak to me, and whether I'm being accurate or not, all I'm doing here is trying to interpret what I heard the game saying with this art direction. I could go on to talk about the prettiest environment in any game. The Flooded District, with its rich tapestry of colors, each one with their own individual meanings within the context of the game, or the sharp contrast between the last hurrah for the posh lifestyle of the aristocracy, Lady Boyle's last party, and the most plague-ravaged lower-class housing in the game, or the amazing fight-or-flight-provoking visuals of the final scene in this game on a high chaos run, or the way that lighting is used to make a place as destitute and hopeless as all others, the Hound Pit's pub, feel so much more homey and comfortable than similarly worn-down environments in other sections of the game. But, truth be told, I've had a very tough time keeping my productivity up amidst the move that I discussed in my previous video on Minecraft, and the holidays, and all sorts of other stuff. Sorry if it feels like I'm cutting this one short. I've got a much richer video on Dishonored planned for the future, and because of some other external factors, I'm in a real rush with this one, so I'll wrap this up for now by talking about the moment that has me convinced that there were secret geniuses working on this game: the assassination of Dowd. At the very climax of the Flooded District, again the most beautiful level in any game, we finally confront Dowd, the one who killed the Empress and started the game's plot. We can either steal a key from him to show him that we chose to spare his life, and that he needs to leave Dunwall and never return, or we can sneak up on him and slit his throat. However, my favorite way of handling this scene will always be to challenge him to a duel. You can sneak into Dowd's quarters and use bend time to dispatch a guard, only to realize that Dowd is also capable of bend time and is therefore aware of your intrusion. He challenges you to a duel, and amidst a handful of his men, each frozen in time as you quickly move around each other, ducking and weaving, teleporting around, trading sword blows and trying to sneak up on each other from unexpected directions, then bend time ends, and Dowd tells his men to stand down, because he knows that it's his destiny to fight you honorably. He leads you outside to a more appropriate battleground on a nearby rooftop, and when you defeat him, he sends his men away once more, saying that he needs to talk to you. Dowd, the man who killed your Empress and lover and helped to plunge Dunwall into chaos and strip you of your honor, asks for his life. Directly behind him is a statue of the Empress, and you're staring down your chance to avenge her. If you choose to take his life, Corvo grabs Dowd by the collar, lifts him up, and slits his throat. What's so fantastic about this is that Dowd's head perfectly lines up with the head of the Empress's statue behind him, and when your blade glides across his neck and you throw him to the side to reveal the still lost visage of your Empress, it's clear that you're no better than Dowd was. Ultimately, killing Dowd here was completely pointless. It didn't solve anything. The framing of Dowd's throat, perfectly in line with that of the Empress, makes it impossible to ignore that Corvo has lost all his honor. Dowd's acolytes look onward from the shadows as their leader's taken down by an even more ruthless killer, and before they can intervene, you disappear in the blink of an eye, back into the shadows, back to where you belong. Every single thing that we see in this game tells us so much, if you choose to read between the lines. Whether it's the game teaching you its mechanics, or it's urging you to try out different tactics, hinting at a hidden path or some extra supplies, displaying the hypocrisy and willful ignorance of the people who destroyed the once beautiful city of Dunwall, or informing us of our characters' motivations and internal struggles, Dishonored's visuals are beautiful, meaningful, intuitive, striking, and just endlessly memorable. I've said it before, and I suspect that I'll never stop saying it. Dishonored is the most beautiful game of all time.
I can feel what you do. I feel the cold night air of the ruin where you sleep, and the stink of the river. Your image strikes the arm. I touches the night. Mine touches the wind. Love for Corvo and your lost mother, for your caretaker, Callista. I feel your fear in the night, your hunger to learn, to become someone important. My hunger too, my fear. You are becoming mine. Close your eyes, Emily. Sleep forever. Feel the void open beneath you. Make room for me. Give in to me, Emily. Give in to me now.
So before I close out this week's video and get to work on one of two more emotional videos that I'm going to be doing, I'd just like to take a moment to verbally thank my patrons. Again, because of the apartment situation I discussed in the last video, I don't really have a good place to record this, so we're just doing my car. Reading off the laptop again, just like last time. I guess as a little tease for the next videos, they're both going to be a little bit emotional in their own ways that I'm really looking forward to. First off, we've got a video that I intend to make about the time that I dedicated an eighth of my life to a shitpost, with the help of a great friend of mine. And the second one, this is more of a Christmas gift for me, if it wasn't obvious. I've got a kind of unique car that I've poured a lot of love into. And again, just as a Christmas gift to myself, I kind of just want to make a video showing off the car and just telling the stories that I have with this, all the growing I've done in here. But anyways, back to the patrons. Those who donate $10 or more monthly, which there was a big surge of after this Minecraft video that I really appreciate. Part of the reason I was able to pass inspection on this car this year. I'm getting ahead of myself. Point is, really appreciate all the support that I've gotten recently. That last video has done better than anything I've uploaded all year, which is really huge. I really needed that right now financially, and just for my self-esteem and all that. But anyways, the patrons who donate $10 or more monthly are as follows: Dashy Dashy, Isa, Cheesy Cheese, One-Eyed Willie, Maddie Doman, Dunk Slab, Riley, Dizzy Gwen, D. My fucking laptop just died. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, taking it from the top, those patrons were Dashy, Isa, Cheesy Cheese, One-Eyed Willie, Maddie Doman, Dunk Slab, Riley, Dizzy Gwen, D. You deserve happiness and love. You are valid. Miss Lavender, my homie Metamaniac, A.L., Shang Bouldergrow, Bo E, Delaney, Toma, DJ Jax, Babylon Broken, The Narcissist Cookbook, Asio Batoon, Spooky Ina, Guybrush, Mkoy, Cappy, Lake, Mina, Eva Knight, Panda, Mr. Kokiko, Gwen T, Shay Theus, Bjorb, Lily Leons, Neris, Sean Hamilton, Voiced Mute, Haunted Mystic, Charlotte, Rio, Laura M, Poof Donut, Femboy Fishing, Atheist, Sylvan Pasco, Joannis, IW, Arda Aurelia, Vega Nelson, Demise, Mia Maple, Nicole, Ada Avery, George Rosenbaum, Neurofilter, The Coom Slayer, Summer Celine, Garnet Midnight, Big Time Jim, Darius Fazier, Dinesh Vashakamer, Almost Dead Again, Gab, David Kaiser, Erica, and CeeLo. I guess as another life update, since I know a lot of people are kind of worrying about me right now, as you saw in the last patron read, I had an opportunity to get an apartment, and that one fell through too, unfortunately. But it's looking like in January, there's a pretty good chance I will have a roommate willing to move in with us. So that will make it a lot easier to find something, hopefully. We'll just have to see what happens. Either way, for everyone who's worrying about me, I am surviving. Me and Charlotte both are. We're doing just fine, all things considered. It's just a matter of not having the personal freedom or liberty that we are used to or just want in general. You know, things like being able to go out in the living room and decorate our house the way we want and all that, and have our own spaces. I've actually been putting a lot of work into my car lately just because it's like the only place where I feel like I can do some homemaking of any kind, really. A place where I have any sort of control over how things look and feel. So hopefully I'll get to talk about that soon in time for the car video. In the meantime, I've got a pretty big script to write, a more emotional one. This Dishonored video was a lot less personal than what I'm used to, and it was kind of a slog to work through because of that, although I do think it's pretty good. Short though it may be. But yeah, if you guys like my more emotional stuff, there's some very awesome personal stories I'm going to be getting to tell in these next couple videos, so look forward to that as much as I will. Okay, that's all I have to say. Have a good week, everyone. Okay, wow, it turns out that noise was a can of Staples compressed air that I had to clean out my car, certain dusty areas that I was just squeezing down on, so mystery solved. I'm not about to explode.